Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing with you a new scrapbook layout design process video that I created. I figured I'd do a voiceover because it has been a while and I kind of feel like without doing it, some things are getting missed. So I hope you enjoy this video and I hope I can concisely explain to you the process and my thought process while I was creating this layout. Just a little disclaimer too, if you can hear purring in the background, I have Miss Ava cuddling with me and that's why you hear the purring. So just ignore it if you are able to, or enjoy it if that's what you like, ASMR. So when I sat down to create this layout, the only thing I knew for sure was that I wanted to document, first of all, February, about last month. So this is my entry for about last month for the month of February 2025. It's also about the biggest event that happened for us as a family in February, which is the twins' birthday. So you can see that I have started with the layout base and photos as well. The layout base is going to be 6 by 8 inches. It is going to fit inside a page protector when I sit down to actually make this layout. And then the photos are in a column on the right hand side of the layout, and they will be, when I print them, measuring 2 by 2 inches. I had planned on sharing a little clip of the photos that I'm going to be including in this layout, but I went and deleted everything that was on my phone and they're no longer here. So you'll just have to wait until I create the layout. I also have 15. I found that by searching through the image library in Cricut Design Space, and the little scallop circle with 15 in it, I created as well, just using basic shapes. And I found that 15 in the image library as well. Here's a quick image of my color inspiration, because at this point I didn't know really what colors I wanted to use, and then I had an aha moment and realized the colors in the t-shirts that we bought from concert would be the inspiration for the color inspiration for this layout. I need to back the bus up here just for a second. I mentioned that the biggest event in February for us is the twins' birthday. I forgot to mention what we did for the twins' birthday, their 15th, was we took them to see Mother in Edmonton, which happened to be right on their birthday. It was written in the stars. It couldn't have worked out better. And it was a fantastic evening. So the t-shirt inspiration came from that Mother concert. So the second image that you just saw is a 6 by 8 piece of pattern paper that I had in my stash. It's actually scrap. I'm not entirely sure what collection anymore it comes from. I'm pretty sure it is photoplay paper, but I don't know which exact collection anymore. I thought that would work really well to tie the colors of the t-shirt into the layout. And I also decided at this point, rather than having a little piece of pattern paper layered behind my title, 15, it would make more sense to cover the entire left-hand side of this layout with that pattern paper and then put another like white cardstock base on top of that to hold everything else. So the title and the journaling. One of the best parts about Cricut Design Space is honestly sifting through the image library. There's so many fantastic images. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that footage with you just to show you how much great stuff there is in there. So I picked a couple of patterns that I thought closely resembled the pattern paper that I plan on using. And I'm going to adjust the flowers in the color of the flowers in the pattern that I finally settle on to mimic the colors found in the pattern paper. So there'll be blues, pinks, a little bit of yellow, I think, and then I throw some red in there as well because I thought it just worked really well together. I like to choose layered images for patterns in my designing because it helps me at least better visualize how the layout will look when I actually put it together. The patterns might not be exact, but it's close enough to give me a general idea of how the layout could look when it's finally completed. So the reason why also this layout is so dark with like a lot of black is because that's the same as the t-shirt as well. And quite honestly, the atmosphere at the concert was dark too, right? Except for strobe lights and all that fun stuff. It also seems to really suit the twins as well, especially Addison. She's kind of dark, goth, vamp sort of vibing, and it worked overall for the entire story. Another reason why I think using layered images is such a great idea is because it gives me the opportunity to play around with colors and kind of find a colorway, color scheme that I like the best. Because sometimes I find if colors are off, it ends up being there's something off about the layout, but I can't put my finger on what it is. Generally, in my opinion, it could be the colors. So I like to play around with it, see what feels the best, and then when I'm happy with what I have in front of me, I move on to the next part of the layout. So here you can see I am creating the black base that's going to go behind the floral pattern, and then that is going to go on the left-hand side of the layout next to the photos. It was at this point that inspiration hit again, and I decided to turn the little square or rectangle that I was going to have pattern paper behind the title would look better as a mat on top of that pattern paper. So here I have adjusted the size of that mat, we'll call it, and I'm going to readjust now the sizing of the title and my little number 15 embellishment. Below the title, I'm going to include, obviously, the journaling. Before I do that, though, one of my favorite things to do in designing and creating digitally is including borders or layers on the layout that are draw rather than cut. I feel like without it, my layout is incomplete. And when I do add them, it's just that one extra little piece that helps make the layout feel complete, if that makes sense. An added bonus is that little rectangle. Usually it's 1/4 of an inch smaller than the piece that it's being attached to. It's a great way to keep my journaling condensed and in a certain spot, kind of like a speech bubble, so to speak. Not exactly in the shape of a speech bubble, but that's kind of, in a way, roundabout way, how I think of the drawn borders, layers that I create in my layouts. And for me personally, they're kind of indispensable. It's just something that I need to do. I'm creating a subtitle here right now. My subtitle, quote unquote, is going to be the month and the year. It's basically just so that I know this is my summary of February, and it is part of my About Last Month series, I guess, of layouts that are going into my album. Just at this point, I'm not quite happy with the font, so I'm playing around with fonts until I find one that I think works best with the other fonts that I've already chosen. Just a quick little side note, if you noticed a little ways back, I had the number 15 enlarged, and you could see that there was stars that were cut out of it and then stars that were kind of layered around it in the image. The stars inspired me, or that image at least inspired me to use more stars throughout the layout as well. So around February 2025, I have 2 additional stars. I may add more to the layout when I sit down to cut the paper and create the layout. But for now, I'm just going to keep 2 stars on either side of February. And because I know right now that they are going to be really small and will not cut very nicely with my Cricut, I'm eventually going to edit those so that they are drawn and attached to the layout rather than cut. Because I know they're not going to cut very well because they're so itty bitty, I tend to make those images drawn so that I can either color them in if I feel inspired to do so, or just leave them blank as they are. So as you can see right now, I am working on the journaling. Journaling for me is a kind of a touchy subject. Not touchy per se, but I'm long-winded and have a really hard time being concise. I even feel that way when I'm talking. So I write my journaling, edit it, reread it, edit again, and over until I have it in a place where it's concise and flows really nicely and doesn't feel or read awkward, if that makes sense. It's also somewhat of a lengthy process because while I am writing my journaling, I am keeping in mind the sizing as well. I try and keep the size of each sentence relatively the same from one to the next, depending on the length of the sentence. The sizing, like the height, is going to be slightly different and stuff. So I edit quite a few things as I go, just to try and keep everything, I think, visually appealing mostly, especially to my eye. And my eye is very critical, like we all are of ourselves, and but it's just what I do. So for those reasons, that's why journaling is a rather lengthy process. It's also why it is the last step in my drafting process as well. It gives me time to sort of start brainstorming what I want to say in my journaling, how I'm going to match the words to the visual story I've already told through the paper and the photos. And again, just to reiterate, the time that I spend drafting my layout and drafting the journaling is completely a labor of love and is worth my time, in my opinion, because I'm not wasting any products. Maybe it takes a little longer to draft than it should, but that's the perfectionist in me. And in the end, I think it's completely worth it. I approach my designing with the mindset that I'm using this as a tool to inspire creativity and also to take most, if not all, of the guesswork out of crafting for everyone, including myself. The reason I started doing this was because I struggled so much with knowing where to start and where I wanted to, the direction I wanted to take my layout in. I hated wasting all that time and product and ending up with something that I didn't like. I don't know, it could just be me, but I think a lot of us, or most of us, from time to time do struggle with this very thing. And this became, for me, a means to an end to solve that problem and hopefully avoid that vicious cycle. So basically, I approach my layout designing as the digital version of our traditional paper sketch. It is a tool meant to inspire and jumpstart your creativity. And if you are an individual that has difficulty using their hands and does not create or craft as much as they would like to because it's not possible for them, I'd like to think that creating digitally and using your die cutting machine, your Cricut, would be a good fit for you and possibly make crafting easier for you. So I have been working on my journaling for a while now. I'm pretty sure I have it in a place where it flows really nicely, it makes sense, it's concise, and it's at this point where I can start building my layout back together and putting it together to make it a complete image. So what exactly does that mean? All those different parts of this layout that I worked on individually get grouped back together and made into one image that will serve as your digital version of a layout sketch. This part of the process is also broken down into steps as well, because I like to make sure everything is evenly spaced, especially in terms of the journaling. I like to use, or generally use, the align function that's in the top toolbar, in the toolbar along the top of the screen in Design Space. I use that both horizontally, so that adjusts, it centers everything. It's your justification if you were using like a Word document. And then I also use it vertically, and that adjusts the spacing between each sentence so that it is equally distanced from one sentence to the next. Once I've done that, I group the entire journaling image together, and then I group it to the next layer, make sure it's centered, then it becomes attached to its partner in the buddy system, and so on until the layout has been reconstructed and basically built back together from the bottom up, or I guess from the top down. At this point in the design process, it's also a really great opportunity to iron out the final touches, the very last details of the layout before assembling everything back together. This will generally look different from layout design to layout design. In this particular case, I'll mainly focus on adjusting the title and subtitle and the color of text that makes up the journaling. The reason I'm going to focus on adjusting the size of the title, and by extension the number 15 embellishment as well, is because when everything is grouped back together, the title is a little too small and the gap between that title and the journaling is too great. Why is that important? Because when you go to cut the paper and put this layout together for documenting, the gap that is between those two different portions of the layout is exaggerated when it is cut and assembled. So I take the extra time to sort of play around with the sizing in an attempt to close that gap. And by extension, that's going to include my subtitle as well. If you choose to create this layout and use it in your own documenting, or even if you decide to design your own layout in Cricut Design Space, that is something I would recommend just being aware of and cognizant of, so that you don't run into the some of the same obstacles that I have learned over time as I've been creating with my Cricut. So when I am happy with having adjusted everything and making sure the alignment and spacing looks good, I can move on to the very, very last step, which is saving my project. I'm curious, how did you enjoy today's process video? Did you enjoy the voiceover and a little bit more information being shared besides the subtitles? Or did you like the other way better? Do you have any burning questions that you'd like to know about designing a layout in Cricut Design Space, or just using Cricut in general? I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If anything was unclear, leave them in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed my video and I hope it has inspired you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. If you are returning to my channel, I am equally as glad that you're here. Thank you so much for spending some of your day with me. If you enjoyed my video, please be sure to hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more content like this, because it interests you and has inspired you, be sure to hit the subscribe button as well, and then hit the bell so that you don't miss anything. Lastly, if you just can't help it and you need to see more, head down to the description box. I'll have the playlist linked down there for you. One last reminder, make sure you hit the bell so that you don't miss any videos from me, because the next video that I will be sharing here is going to be creating this very layout. Thanks again for joining me, friends. Take care.